John Henry Doc Holliday was the dentist-turned-outlaw who gambled and gunned his way across the Wild West. But there was one enemy he couldn't outrun. After the OK Corral, the Caches County Cowboys attacked Doc Holliday's friends. But the Cowboys forgot who they were dealing with. Doc and his gang would go on to exact their swift and unspeakably brutal revenge. But we'll get back to that. Doc Holliday was born in August of 1851 in Griffin, Georgia. His father, a distinguished veteran, was a well-respected man and ensured that his son received a classical education in Latin mathematics and history. By all accounts, Holliday came from a respectable family. Unfortunately, fate tore that family apart and changed the course of his life forever. Shortly after his 15th birthday, Holliday's mother passed away from tuberculosis, along with his adopted brother. Holliday studied dentistry, graduating from the Pennsylvania College of Dental Surgery at the tender age of 20. In fact, the college had to hold on to Holliday's diploma until he turned 21, as he was technically too young to perform dental surgery. Holliday was working in Atlanta and living with his uncle to save up for his own practice when fate intervened. Around that time, Holliday learned the devastating news that he had contracted tuberculosis, likely from his mother, years earlier under the advice of his physician. He sought out drier clients for his condition. Holliday left Georgia and eventually settled in Dallas, Texas. For a while, he ran a successful dentistry business with his father's friend, Dr. John Seeger. They even won an award at the county fair for best set of gold teeth, amongst others. Holliday's tuberculosis worsened, and he frequently broke out into coughing fits during dental surgery. Slowly, his dental practice began to decline, and Holliday turned to gambling to foot his bills. While gambling in Dallas, Holliday has first confirmed gunfight after a dispute. Holliday traded bullets with a saloon keeper. Luckily, despite the barrage, neither man was injured in the exchange. However, Holliday's next dispute ended in a gruesome injury and pools of blood, with the tensions in Texas mounting. Holliday followed his lady luck all the way to Denver, Colorado. However, even there, his temper got him into trouble. Holliday got into an argument with the infamous gambler Bud Ryan. When things got heated, Holliday lunged at Ryan with a knife, and he seriously wounded him. Holliday bounced around the Wild West for about a year, eventually arriving in Breckenridge, Texas. Clearly, however, nothing had changed. After a disagreement with the gambler, Henry Kahn, during the game, Holliday beat the prominent gambler repeatedly with his walking stick. Both Holliday and Kahn spent some time in the lockup for their brawl. The authorities, it seemed, wanted to give the two hotheads some time to cool down. But Kahn only grew angrier later that same day, after the authorities had released them. Kahn approached an unarmed Holliday and gave him his best shot. Holliday survived, but was seriously injured. Once he recovered, Holliday traveled to Fort Griffin, Texas, where he met the love of his life, Mary Catherine Big Nose Kate Hornerney. She was a tough, stubborn, and fearless Wild West working girl who, much like Holliday, had come from a respectable background. After a brief stint in Fort Griffin, they moved to Dodge City, Kansas, to turn over a new leaf. It seems like Holliday's run-in with Kahn had him thinking twice about the outlaw life. He registered at a boarding house in Dodge City, along with Big Nose Kate, under the name Dr. and Mrs. John H. Holliday. He even ran an advertisement in the local paper for his dentistry services, as he waited for his dental practice to take off. He continued gambling that Masterson claimed to have first-hand knowledge of Holliday's lethality. Masterson claimed that while Holliday was passing through in Jacksonboro, Texas, he got into an altercation with an unnamed U.S. Army serviceman. As these disputes tended to in the Old West, things turned brutal. Masterson claimed that Holliday and this unnamed serviceman got into an exchange of bullets. Naturally, Holliday got the better of the situation and vanquished his opponent. There's even a record of a Private Robert Smith who was gunned down by an unknown assailant. However, apart from Masterson, no one linked Holliday to the D. Whether the stories about Holliday swirling around the Wild West like a tumbleweed or true or not, what mattered was that people believed them as Wyatt Earp's brother. Virgil said in an interview years later, "Most of the stories about Holliday were only hearsay for which no one had any evidence. Holliday opened a saloon in Las Vegas, New Mexico, with his long-term love interest, Big Nose Kate. But as Holliday was enjoying a game of poker, trouble erupted. A former U.S. Army scout, Mike Gordon, caused a scene with one of Holliday's saloon girls. Holliday would have been happy to let the incident go if Gordon hadn't done what he did next. Gordon and this unnamed saloon girl had at some point in the past been lovers desperate to win her back. Gordon tried to convince her to leave her job in the saloon and join him when the woman refused. Things took a turn for the worst. According to one version of the events, Gordon became irate and stormed out of the saloon shouting obscenities. This likely upset Holliday, as it would have driven business away from his establishment. The other version of events is that Gordon stormed out of the saloon, then spun around and began randomly firing into the establishment. Regardless of what exactly Gordon was doing, Holliday handled the situation. Decisively, he calmly got up from his poker table, walked out of the saloon, leveled his revolver at Gordon's head, and without a second thought pulled the trigger. Holliday and Big Nose Kate received word from Wyatt Earp and his brothers about a silver rush out in Tombstone, Arizona. Tired of playing a host in their own establishment, they decided to join their friends, but the couple's troubles followed them. They fought constantly and bitterly, until one day Big Nose Kate crossed a line. Shortly after Holliday and Big Nose Kate arrived in Tombstone, the town became the central focus of a stagecoach robbery. Gone horribly wrong, a small band of outlaws had carried out a fatal heist that claimed the lives of 2 passengers. Authorities only managed to identify Bill Leonard as one of the assailants. County Sheriff John B. and an Oriental saloon owner, Milt Joyce, were short on a list of suspects for the gruesome heist, but they had good reason for wanting to pin the whole thing on none other than Doc Holliday. Ian and Joyce applied Big Nose Kate with drinks all night until she couldn't see straight. Then they convinced her to sign a statement implicating Holliday in the horrible stagecoach heist with their new evidence. Ian and Joyce clapped Holliday in irons and prepared him for the hangman's noose when Wyatt Earp got wind of what was happening. He knew he had to act fast to save his friend. After all, Holliday had saved Wyatt's life. Before Earp had managed to get Big Nose Kate to recant her statement and found witnesses who could attest to Holliday's whereabouts on the day of the heist. Thanks to Wyatt, Holliday was free from the news. Clearly, however, his lady luck was no longer lucky. Holliday ended his relationship with Big Nose. Kate gave her a fat stack of cash and put her on a train out of town. But he still had a score to settle on. October 26th, 1881. Holliday got the opportunity to pay back Wyatt Earp and his brothers for saving his skin. Virgil Earp, acting as a deputy U.S. Marshal, deputized Holliday and asked him to help in disarming a group of outlaws called the Cowboys, who had wandered into town. Holliday agreed. Holliday and the other members of the Earth Party found the Cowboys outside of Holliday's boarding house. Believing that the Cowboys intended to do him harm, Holliday drew his revolver and open-fired on the stunned outlaws. What happened next has become the stuff of Old West legends. After Holliday drew his revolver, a horrible hail of bullets ensued. His first shot hit and fatally wounded Tom McClory. McClory's brother, Frank, then yelled at Holliday. "I've got you now." Holliday fired back, "Blaze away. You're a daisy if you have." Both posses then openly fired on each other in a horrible incident that became known as the gunfight at the OK Corral. The entire fight lasted less than a minute, but by the time the last shot rang out, Holliday had more blood on his hands. Thankfully, it wasn't his. In addition to Tom McClory, Holliday had allegedly dispatched both Frank McClory with a shot behind the ear and possibly Billy Clanton. However, even as the shots stopped, the feud had only just started in retribution for the slaying of their friends cowboys. Outlaws, presumably Frank Still, Well and Clanton attacked the Earth Brothers. Once again, Wyatt called on Holliday to help him seek revenge, and what would become known as the Earp Vendetta Ride. Holliday, along with Wyatt and his other deputies, formed a posse to escort the injured Virgil to safety in California. However, they cut their path in blood and bodies. In late March of 1882, Holliday, Wyatt, and other members of the Earth Party tracked down and bumped off members of the Cowboys, leaving their bullet-riddled bodies behind. For their actions in March of 1882, Holliday and Earp had to flee, warrants for their capture. Their bloody deeds had left behind a trail of bodies that no lawman could ignore, and clearly the tensions had gotten to the two best friends. While laying low in Albuquerque, the pair got into it after Holliday insulted Earp's woman. Fortunately, they didn't draw their revolvers on each other, but they did go their separate ways. Without the support of his best friend, Wyatt Earp, Holliday's condition began to take its toll on him, and he slowed his pace in short order. The authorities caught up with Holliday in Colorado and were ready to send him to the news. Despite their spat, however, it was Wyatt's turn to save Holliday's life. Once again, Wyatt arranged with Masterson to have Holliday extradited to Colorado on bunco charges and ultimately released on bail. Of course, a simple brush with the law did nothing to stop Holliday from seeking revenge on his enemies. Despite the fact that he was mostly flying solo and that his health was steadily declining, it's possible that Holliday continued hunting down cowboys and settling old scores. When the cowboy outlaw Johnny Ringo, for example, turned up with a bullet in his head, rumors began circulating that Holliday had done the deed by 1884. Holliday's health had taken a turn for the worse, and he was running out of money to get by. He had borrowed the small sum of $5 from William J. Billy Allen, bartender of the Monarch Saloon in Leadville, Colorado. Instead of gratitude, it seemed that Holliday only ever intended to pay back Allen with lead to his head. Allen demanded that Holliday pay back the loan by August 19th, or else. With his health failing him, Holliday knew that he couldn't get the money, more importantly, seen as though he was so close to his own grave. He knew he had nothing to lose. He knew when and where Allen would be to settle their business on August 19th. Holliday waited for Allen at Hyman's Saloon, a favorite of the bartenders. When Allen walked in, Holliday pulled out his piece and fired, but his illness had even taken its toll on his once impeccable aim. The bullet missed. Allen hit the door frame behind him. Stunned, Allen turned to run but tripped. Holliday seized on the opportunity, standing almost directly over Allen. Holliday fired again. This time, he didn't miss. The bullet entered through Allen's upper right arm between his shoulder and elbow and tore through the entire thing. Severing an artery, Allen stumbled to his feet, staggered onto the wall, and then collapsed into the arms of an onlooker. Believably, Allen survived Holliday's ruthless attack. The authorities charged Holliday for the incident and put him on trial. However, the jury found that Holliday had acted in self-defense. Given that Allen had threatened him before, as such, Holliday was free to live out his final days. He just didn't have many of them left. Holliday's health declined rapidly after that. He eventually settled at Hotel Glenwood, hoping that the sulfur fumes would cure him. Suffice to say, the noxious gases did not help his situation. As he drew his final breaths, he asked his nurse for a shot of hooch. When she declined, he remarked, "This is funny," staring at his bare feet. He had always imagined that he would pass away with his boots on in a bloody hail of bullets before losing his battle with tuberculosis. Holliday had made peace with both his friend Wyatt Earp and his common-law wife, Big Nose Kate. Despite the hard life he had lived, he expressed no regrets. A few years earlier, a reporter had asked him whether his bloody deeds and feuds weighed on his conscience. Holliday simply replied, "I coughed that up with my lungs years ago." Thanks for watching History Exposé. If you love uncovering the best stories in history, hit like and subscribe to keep exploring with us. Don't forget to visit our main page, Factor Nate, for more incredible facts about everything you.